So I'm sure most of you have heard of Edward Snowden, but for those of you who haven't, he is the 29-year-old former NSA contractor that released top secret, not just classified, top secret information in a video in a Hong Kong hotel room. In this video, he describes these massive secret NSA programs that are collecting private information from innocent American civilians. Snowden also revealed a program called PRISM, and this program actually authorizes the NSA to look at private communications between users on major network companies. These companies are Google, Yahoo, Facebook, and Microsoft. So of course the public was outraged, and I think we saw that a lot in the media, as there was a lot of coverage on that, because everyone knew about the Patriot Act. We knew that the NSA was given these abilities to conduct surveillance over terrorists, but we thought that was just for terrorists, right? Not innocent civilians. Well, it turns out that the NSA is not only spying on innocent Americans, but also on foreign allies and businesses as well. We have a problem. We have an agency that's out of control, and it's in our hands to fix that problem. The USA Freedom Act places restrictions on the National Security Agency, which is the NSA, and their unchecked ability to spy on innocent civilians, as well as reining in this out-of-control agency. And there's a lot of reasons that this bill is actually really, really important for us. And the main reason is that it is destroying delicate relationships between not only citizens, but allies and businesses as well. So first, and I think most prominently, is that it's going through our personal data. It's going through our private information. And during his tell-all interview, Edward Snowden revealed that the NSA has these massive data collecting agencies. And what they do is not only do they collect the information, but then they save it. That's your phone records, that's your text messages. We say, well, is that a problem? Is them collecting our information that big of a deal? But according to 69% of Americans in a Fox News poll, yes, it is. It's a major problem and not some phony scandal. The relationship between the government and its citizens is also effectively undermined by these programs. It lowers the government's the trust and the credibility that the people have for the government, which, as we all know, is kind of already low. And it increases the mistrust of lawmakers as well. As well as making governing so much more difficult for the federal agencies. The second problem is that NSA has unrestricted powers that they're using to break into networks of major companies and using network names and siphoning this information. And this problem is actually twofold. The first problem is that what they're doing is that they're forcing these companies to lie and issue denials that they're not giving out private information, but they are, and so they're making them lie to their own paying customers. And at the same time, the other problem is that the NSA is going into their networks anyways. It hacks into their database, and it takes out large data flows of information that it's going to use anyways. And this, of course, once it was released, has created this betrayal between lawmakers and businesses to the government agencies. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg said this discovery was outrageous, while other major corporations like Apple and Google and Yahoo have all had press releases and multiple letters of frustration. If companies can't trust the government, then the relationship between the government and these companies are undermined, and we're stunting economic growth because they're not going to make investments if they're worried about what's going to happen. And lastly, the NSA is spying on foreign nations. And no, it's not our enemies, which is what we would think. They're actually spying on our allies. And this is kind of the latest and the greatest of the NSA revelations. It's that the USA has been listening to German Chancellor Angela Merkel's cell phone, but they've also been following her around in a car. In Brazil, the president canceled his visit to the US. Leaders in France and Italy have protested this surveillance. And Spain has called the US ambassador demanding explanations. We're obviously severing relationships left and right at a time where we really can't afford to do this. Now, with all that kind of being said, lawmakers are really scrambling to fix this problem. The problem is they can't find a bill that does it correctly or does it well. A recent amendment to the Patriot Act was called the Amash Amendment. And though it almost passed, it did fail. And it failed because what the Obama administration described as a blunt approach. It was just too much too soon. Over the past 2 months, there's been almost 24 introductions into the House and the Senate for bills that increase transparency and limit the NSA's ability to do these programs. There is a consensus that reform is needed. I think we can obviously see that, but they're just not sure how to do it. That is until the USA Freedom Act. The USA Freedom Act, I think, lives up to its name, and it's kind of long because it's an acronym. It's Uniting and Strengthening America by Fulfilling Rights and Ending Eavesdropping, Dragnet Collection, and Online Monitoring Act. This was proposed by Democrat Patrick Leahy and Republican Jim Sensenbrenner. And what it does, effectively, is it restricts the NSA's surveillance and ability to collect data and create these data mines of information from innocent American civilians that have no terrorist tendencies whatsoever. And it requires the NSA to discard any of this information they've collected that is not related to ongoing investigations. But it also increases oversight. It gives the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Courts ability to monitor the NSA, and that increases transparency as well. It also allows companies to report how many times they've been asked to give up this information so that customers can see what's going on, and we can greater increase the transparency. And the bill has widespread bipartisan support. In fact, 12 of the votes that failed the Amash Amendment, 8 of them have decided that they're not only going to support the U.S. Patriot Act, but they're also going to be co-sponsors of the bill. Jim Sensenbrenner is the author of this bill, as I said, but he's also the author of the Patriot Act, which is the bill that gave the NSA the ability to do this in the first place. But he said, somewhere along the way, the balance between security and privacy was lost. Washington must regain America's trust in government, and that's why he's proposed the USA Freedom Act. Americans agree as well. According to a Huffington Post, 54% of Americans think that what we have right now in oversight is not what we need. We need more oversight in order to correct this kind of imbalance of power. Some argue, however, of course, that, such as the Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Rogers, that the data collected is actually really important because it helps us fight terrorism as well as organized crime. But the U.S. Patriot Act does nothing to stop this. It only stops collecting information from innocent civilians that have no terrorist tendencies, no relatives that are related, no absolute connections whatsoever, so it doesn't stop the protection of the United States. Some people also argue that we've been doing this for years, so it's really no big deal. However, Senator John McCain says the advanced technology has given us enormous capabilities, and these capabilities are very offensive to both us and our allies. And what that means is now that we have so much more in technology, we need to have abilities to put checks and balances on this because we haven't had to do this before. So to end, the United States Congress should pass the USA Freedom Act in order to significantly reduce the NSA's collecting, siphoning, and collecting, I guess again, of information from innocent United citizens. The Americans support the reform seen in the polls and the anti-NSA rallies that have been held in Washington. The American Civil Liberties Union also supports this reform, calling it far superior to any other bills that have been passed. And major corporations support this reform. Google says, "We applaud the sponsors of the USA Freedom Act." Sensenbrenner himself stated that this misinterpretation of the law that he wrote, threatens the First, Second, and Fourth Amendment rights. Congress never intended this, and he said, "I will rein in the abuse of both the Patriot Act and the U.S. Constitution with the support of the American public." According to the polls, the Americans have spoken, and they agree. So, thank you.